Good evening, everybody. It is 6:32. We are here for the Public Works Committee. Um, Rusty Kudo has been excused for this evening, but Trustee McGovern and myself are present. We are joined by Liam Butchlick, who will be presenting tonight one of our agenda items. We only have one, which is the 2025 Capitol Drive Pedestrian Improvement Initiative, and that's to consider draft pavement marking policy. This will be the 7th meeting for this matter. So I will turn it over to Director Bushlick.
Thank you. So just a quick summary of our previous discussions. Actually, a recap of our very last meeting at which the committee selected some of the options from among the alternatives we've been discussing. And so that was that the paint markings on non-RTO roadways should be maintained every other year. The current markings should be maintained, or the current epoxy markings should be maintained in epoxy. And then I didn't have noted that there was any specific direction given to the marking material for new construction. But I did do the analysis based on maintaining the current practice, which is in infrastructure projects, new markings go in as epoxy. So using those criteria, you have in your packet an estimated marking costs over the next 10 years. This assumes a 3% annual inflationary increase. And it also assumes that epoxy markings on Capitol have an approximate 3-year life, where epoxy markings on all other roadways are assumed to have a 5-year life. That is primarily because of the differences in traffic volumes and turning movements.
Thank you. Trustee McGovern, have you had a chance to review this, and do you have any questions?
Right. Doing the math right. So under current rules, it's an average cost of about 100,000 a year. The proposal would be about 100,000 a year. And the current practices is about 114,000 annual, looking ahead 10 years.
The projected average cost over the next 10 years based on the selected criteria is about $115,000.
Yeah.
That answer your question?
Yeah.
I guess at this point, I think it comes down to a big picture sort of budget discussion, right? I think that I give you a lot of credit for putting these numbers in here. I think this reflects a lot of the conversations that we've had. I think we all want to be very mindful of some of those main arteries or the main connective sort of pieces in Shore, the main visible areas in Shorewood, which is reflected here with, the Capitol crosswalks and, Downer. It would be, I'd love to see us trim somewhere, something, somehow. I don't know where that is. I think we've already kind of made some concessions by repainting every 2 years. Maybe we don't see this inflation. Maybe something happens. We save some money along the way, but it's a really big number. And, I'd love to see how this fits into the bigger picture and, are there ways we can trim this down a little bit more than where it's at right now? And if we were to do that, would you have suggestions for how to trim this down? Or do you feel like this might be the lowest number that you can come up with us still being good stewards to the community with remarking?
I really don't have any suggestions for trimming. I mean, the committee selected the criteria, and based on the committee's articulation of what it wanted, these are the costs.
Okay. And then So has finance, I don't know, Becky, has finance seen these numbers and how do they feel like this, how will this play out in future budgets? Because these are pretty big numbers. This is a fairly big increase than what we've been paying, so.
Mhm. So on page 2 of the memo, I actually provided some descriptions of future budgets
Mhm.
and based upon the projected costs. So as a municipality, we are limited by the percentage of net new construction and any additional debt that we've taken on in order to maintain compliance with levy limits. So a couple of things to consider that are just hard numbers. So, like over the last decade, the village on average has raised property taxes just over 1% annually, except for in last budget cycle. And while we increased them, 6.77%, that was only possible due to underutilized levy capacity that had accumulated over those prior budgetary years. So had you not had that budget capacity, you would have had to go to referendum to exceed your levy limit. A 1%, just to kind of give people an idea, a 1% increase in property tax levy equates to approximately 134,500.
Sure.
So I want you to keep that number in mind because, you know, last year, it sure was not big. We're not expanding with large industrial parks or subdivisions or things of that nature. But net new construction last year was 0.74%. You know, so that equates to just under 100,000. So from a fiscal perspective, if your annual costs for these markings are about 100,000 a year moving forward, you would need, and you wanted to take on that, you would need to assume that all other expenses are flat.
Which they're not going to
Right.
be, right?
I mean, it's just, so it's
Right.
kind of like, how do we look at that? And so while it's not telling you how you can accommodate for these numbers, it ultimately, it's going to be a simple budget decision, right?
Right.
One of many.
Yeah, no, I know. Yep.
Right. So I tried to kind of pull out just that salient point that, you know, in kind of listening to Leanne, she has done such a great job of pulling out really what these things mean, which is different than how it has been before with the nature of epoxy. Also requests for improvement in that area, but then, you know, the board at the end of the day is going to need to balance this out. There's not a secret formula I can give you for it. But you definitely should be weighing this significantly as you look at policy, because you can work on a policy and adapt something, but whether it gets funded is a whole nother story.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
want people to be realistic about it, right? I mean, this is a group who's saying, you know, we take these issues seriously. We want to do something with them, but at the same time, there's only so much you can do within that pie.
Yeah.
So I guess that was my contribution
No, thank you.
Yeah.
to kind
So
of pull.
if we adopt the policy though, then at budget time, this will just be kind of something that's built in unless we vote to take it out.
But I think it sounds like we could move this to the full board and then budget will get this particular item probably, right? Budget committee may,
No,
no, it'll go past budget and it'll be
it would go to the board as a
full board
policy.
policy. Okay.
So, part of the intention of developing a policy was that the board would then have some set of guidelines for both any future requests that may come in and for budgeting purposes. Obviously, the budgeting purposes isn't quite as straightforward as we all might like it to be, given the size of the nut we're trying to crack. So moving forward with a policy for consideration is one option. it's, to be perfectly honest, it is my preferred option simply because it provides our department some guidance for work planning, budgeting, all those other things that we try to forecast. The other option would be to take what we have here. I could run some different numbers where we look at extending timeframes. I wouldn't advise extending timeframes on the paint markings any longer than every other year. But we could certainly look at moving that epoxy, say capital to 5 years and everything else to 7, see what those numbers look like. That would be an option. Another option would simply be to not move forward with the policy and address this on an annual basis during the budget cycle. The Department of Public Works can prepare its budget with a request for markings that we believe are necessary. And then the board, Budget Finance Committee, can weigh that request with all of the other requests and needs, and then make a priority determination.
Are there any around the village that have gone more than 2 years or
For paint?
for paint?
No, as I've mentioned, we paint annually.
So pushing it 2 years would already be.
Yeah, would be a change.
And we'd hate to sacrifice anything on Capitol and Morris. That intersection's really big. Wilson. It's hard to find those areas where you can cut more than what we've already tried to cut here, while maintaining that sort of priority of pedestrian safety in our community. I would be interested in, sorry, Trustee Stokebrand?
Yeah, I appreciate Leanne offering that option. For budgeting, if we have guidelines, would you say we currently have guidelines but not policy?
Correct.
That to me seems like a way to be more nimble and responsive than locking ourselves into. Just because it's we've got so many pressures, and this, to me, putting in a policy takes away that flexibility. And I appreciate all of this information. I think it's still valuable and meaningful going forward. But from my financial standpoint, locking into a policy instead of, and moving away from a guideline when the numbers are so tight, I guess I think that it'd be preferable to stick with the guideline.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I echo Trustee Stokebrand's comments primarily because even if you adopted a policy that required you to do this, you would not be able to fund it. So the guideline, I think, really helps, but it doesn't change the numbers. I like Leanne's suggestion of taking a look at some different options with extension of time frame in order for the committee to do its due diligence. So I don't know, that sounds like a logical next step for this group. And then if there are any other recommendations or things, because I don't know if there's anything more that you need to cover from this item or need feedback on, but let's get you, oh, okay, you do.
Well, yes, I do. That was not meant to stop you. That was just meant as a yes. Please continue.
Okay, we'll be brief. This group, I also agree with Trustee Stokebrand, but that the review of this is much different because these conditions have changed, right? I mean, epoxy has not been a large part of the scope of our work in this area. So once the committee is done doing the due diligence, even if they are guidelines, I think we should go to the board with whatever the scope of the recommendations are from a guideline perspective, because the remainder of the board also needs to receive the same education and get informed and up to speed on this item before we even hit the budget discussions.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Rich Bushel, would you follow up?
Oh, I guess the only, my initial thought, but now, um, I would appreciate some direction,
Mhm.
not tonight, obviously, if we're gonna still, have a board level discussion. Just, we have money budgeted for paint markings this year. Normally by this point in time, I already have a contract to do that work. So,
So you're waiting for our decision to
Yes.
figure out where to go
Yep.
next? I mean, if I would say for this year, we should follow the guidelines, right? And move forward with getting this scheduled and
Okay.
not wait for this policy. And I think we can continue talking about a policy behind the scenes. I wouldn't be totally opposed to moving this to the full board and having a much bigger conversation. These are items that need to get done regardless. And I'd hate for potentially future boards or future years to put things off and us to get further and further behind, which then would make it more and more expensive as the years went on. But I do see sort of both, I see both sides here. So, so for example, if this came up in our guideline scenario, if this came up and a board wanted to cut, let's say 2026, we're scheduled for $140,000. And the board said, well, we can't do, the epoxy here, or we can only do half of the epoxy. That's still going to have to be done at some point, right? So then it gets pushed back to 2027. So you're going to see these numbers every year, but they might be moved around and they might get more expensive as we go down as the years go on. So, and that's kind of what's gotten us in trouble in the past is we've tried to, make the things work for that given year, but then subsequent years are more expensive and things get behind that way. So, so I honestly, I can see both sides of this situation, the policy versus just staying with the guidelines. And I would love it if I would propose that we follow the guidelines, get out, do what we need to do this year and continue talking about trying to make this a policy for future years.
okay. I just realized something that I would like to point out just to make sure that you understand. I was working off a spreadsheet with many tabs and I just realized that I printed the wrong one. So this doesn't actually reflect the criteria that you approved at your last meeting. The paint
Every
should
other
be every
year?
other year.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, so that number
I was
will-
wondering like, why is that like that? But
That number will drop.
there was
Yeah.
maybe, okay,
It'll drop, but not,
a
you know,
significant amount. Okay, well.
not enough to probably change the direction that we're talking about moving.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if tomorrow, if you could send me or if you could.
Happy to.
Happy to. Okay. So I would say maybe this is something that we can defer. Can we defer this defer this item? Would you like to make a motion about getting started right now with what you need to do?
I don't know that you need that motion. The money has been budgeted.
Okay.
So we'll go forward with that way. I'm happy to prepare some additional materials for you to discuss. I would defer to Manager Ewald about the scheduling of that, as I know the next April meeting is pretty heavy.
Yeah, I think we'll need to schedule it in over the next several meetings based upon when time is available.
Okay. Do you feel comfortable with that? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All
And
right.
Thank you, Leanne.
Yeah, thank
'Cause
you.
This is really a lot of work went
Well,
into this.
no, I thank you because this is something that we've seen coming.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate the opportunity to take the time to really get into the details because the details are important. It's not quite as simple an issue as it would appear on the surface.
Also, these are big numbers too, which, like Manager Ewald said, have the ability to increase the tax levy here by 1%. So we want to be very mindful and cautious of this, but we also want to do our service to our community by having fresh markings. So thank you very much. If we probably don't need a motion, you've got direction, and we will.
Just a motion to adjourn if that's.
Yep.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
So moved. we're both in favor. So the meeting is adjourned at 6:52 PM. Is
Okay. Like to call this meeting of the Community and Business Relations Committee to order. 7 o'clock. Trustee Kudo has been excused. Trustee Ursink and myself are here. We've got a couple things on the agenda. The first being the what are we doing first? The consideration of a pilot block party permit application for the North Morris roadway for trick or treating. Trustee Ursink.
Yeah.
you wanna-
So
those?
this is something that we've been talking about now for a couple meetings. This was originally proposed by Trustee Kudo, and this based off of conversations that we both had about Morris and the activity on Morris during trick or treat, and kind of thought that it would be a really interesting concept to try to close down the street for trick or treat and create like a block party, allowing people to move a little bit more freely on Morris. Typically what we've seen, and just I do live on Morris. I probably live on one of the busiest sections of this of trick or treating. And every year we see kids just jutting out into the street. We see cars like, the way the street is designed, it's hard for two cars to kind of pass when both sides of the street are parked, and kids just kind of constantly running back and forth. There's been near misses, I think, every year that I've lived here, and I've been out there handing out candy. So we thought, it'd be a really interesting idea this year to try something new and do a block party by closing down the street and opening it up for everybody to come and safely walk the neighborhood. We were talking, we've proposed from Capitol all the way down to Olive, and creating that as one big block party, allowing people to have a fun and safe trick or treat. Those folks that live in the neighborhood and those folks coming from different neighborhoods. So that's kind of the gist of things. Now, over the past basically month from talking about this, I've talked to neighbors. I've pulled social media community sort of groups in social media, and there's just been a resounding sort of positivity to this concept. I think people want to try it for 1 year and see how it works, because everybody understands the the kind of mess it becomes during trick or treat. I think everybody, like I said, everybody's had a really positive, all the neighbors, all the people that live in that sort of like, block, 2 block range have all been extremely positive, want to see it happen. And, so I think, I think it'd be fun to move it forward, and with everybody's sort of buy into it, all the neighbors buy into that. And, I think that it'd be a great experiment. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really great proposal. I think, a lot of different blocks around Shorewood have block parties for Halloween or other events throughout the year. And it's, I think, really nice for people to be able to enjoy the streets without cars whizzing by. And especially in Halloween, I think it'll be a really nice pilot project. And I think would be especially good for some of these people that live on these blocks where you're normally not allowed to do so. This would be kind of something that I think would be fun for the neighborhood. And, generally when you close down a street to vehicles and just make it open to people on foot or on bikes, people would have a great time, and they can just enjoy the street, enjoy the surroundings. And so I'm really glad this was brought forward, and certainly something that I could support.
There have been some comments about maybe shortening the time. I think maybe that was a general sort of people that live in that area, 2 hours. And we've gone through, I think, about $150 to $200 worth of candy. It's just, it's hard to keep up with the traffic, and it's expensive for the residents to like buy that amount of candy if they want to be a part of Halloween and trick or treat. Just to give out candy for the amount of hours that we're there is very expensive. And I think in this situation, it would be, I don't know how it's going to work. Maybe it's a different vibe with a block party. I foresee activating a little bit, maybe including some music, doing some interesting, fun things. So maybe it's a different sort of vibe and it doesn't need to be 2 hours, but I think there is a consensus that 2 hours is a really good sort of time.
Uh, Did you have anything you want to add?
No, I was just gonna make a note that, or just come bring to your attention, after, of course, we have, public safety here tonight, and I'm sure you want to hear from them on this topic. When you do provide a recommendation to the village board, and if permitting, a block party permit for closure is included in the recommendation, just recognize that we don't have capacity to do this on more than just this street at this point in time. So any recommendation that goes to the board in proceeding with that would need to recognize that we're going to be tapped of resources. And so that precludes any other high traffic streets in the village from having this occur on the same date and time. And then as well, we would be looking to the neighborhood to submit that block party permit and kind of work from there. But just wanted to kind of make a note of that. But I know we have all of our active safety here.
Okay. So,
I was gonna just make one note, that, just kind of be interacting with that area. It would be the Morris, it would be Morris, capital to Olive, but we would need to include, I think it's, Kenmore as part of it. So I would probably keep Kenmore open, but close it at, basically Woodburn.
Is that Woodburn to Morris?
Woodburn and I think Woodburn and Olive is that, sorry, my family's having a sports crisis right now. I apologize. You know how it goes. Yeah, so I would keep that Kenmore open all the way down to the end of Woodburn, and that's where I would close it off, because you're gonna have people that are gonna want to park in there, and it's gonna get extremely difficult to maneuver in that if that's closed at Kenmore and Morris. We want to probably push that gate back so people couldn't come into that little nook.
Eforth, you want to provide some comment?
I can't speak for Leanne, but the police department understandably cannot support from a resource standpoint the participation in the block party. We have neither the staffing nor the equipment to close off the roads. PD could support the road closure if the organizers of the event take some security and safety measures to protect the roadways, vehicles, volunteer vehicles blocking the roadways, and those types of things. And we would certainly come through and make sure that everything is underway accordingly, and do our best to provide some security and safety for the event. But we just don't have the resources to conduct the road closures and secure that event with vehicles or personnel. So with that in mind, and police department doesn't typically support block parties except for voluntary attendance. So with that in mind, I mean, the PD could support the road closures, understanding we don't have the staffing or the resources to support it.
Okay. Makes sense. Anyone else either in the room or online? Okay. Well, without any further discussion, you want to make a motion?
Yes, I'd love to make a motion here. So I would move to recommend this request to the Villageville Board to accept a block party permit to pilot street closure during 2025 trick or treat.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Go on to the next item on the agenda. This is discussion and possible action on the 4th of July parade route.
Good evening. I would just start by saying, I thank you for reading the caption. However, I believe the way that it was agendized, we may not be able to take action after all, because it was written as review the 4th of July parade route. So I apologize for any oversight there. Is it listed on the agenda as such? I'm sorry. If not, I can get to what I had, what I wanted to share. You may recall when we brought this item forward to the full village board at the meeting on February 17th, we discussed the various constraints that we had, be it staff capacity, as well as one of the benefits we saw in last year's parade route with modifying it was changing the habit, since in 2026, Oakland will be reconstructed and we'd be having a different parade route entirely. So those were just a couple of things that we initially wrote about in the memo. But then the direction that was given at that meeting on the 17th was for staff to look at the financial considerations if we were to go back to the original route while following the best practices that were recommended and provided from Chief Worth. So we looked at those best practices, applied it to this original route, and with coordination or with collaboration between the police department and DPW, the information in the memo there shows that going back to that route would have quite a financial impact just because of the Jersey barriers and additional class 3 barricades that would be needed to be purchased. Another thing that we talked about or was provided direction to the staff was for us to consider senior residents in the planning. So I'm happy to say that with some additional calls, we have been able to secure a shuttle. So whichever route we decide to, the village board recommends that we provide, go back to doing, we do have a good partner that we've been able to identify. So I would be happy to have Chief Worth come up if she'd like to visit or say anything to you all regarding it. But I think what we have in the memo really identifies the best practices that she had written in that memo.
Okay.
Okay.
No, I
If
think,
there are questions, I'm sorry.
yeah, I mean, I think
Okay.
it's,
Yeah, we read it in the
Okay.
memo, so you don't have to, you don't want to.
Yep.
It's up to you.
I think it's very clear. The packet's made it very clear on, you know, the direction that I think everybody outside of this village board would like to take on this. My thoughts are, you know, just personally, selfishly, love the old route, like to see that continue. But from everything I've read in this packet, it's really hard to go against, you know, public safety, whether it be, you know, the police department, the fire department, emergency, you know, services. I think everybody is kind of saying that this is not the best way to go here. So you know, I would just move. I would like to see the full board have this conversation. I think it's kind of at that point, you know, so I would be more in favor of just deferring this to the full board. I wouldn't mind, I don't mind making a recommendation for the changed route or the shortened route. But, you know, if this is going to make everything easier for everybody, I think I can sacrifice the historic route to move ahead with the modified route. So,
Yeah, I kind of have similar thoughts, just seeing, you know, the strain on resources. We're already short-staffed at the police department, and, you know, that having the longer route poses more of a safety risk and need for more staff, and also about $39,000 additional dollars. I would just prefer to keep it, maintain the modified route that we had in 2024.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, because on the agenda, it says possible action, like, do we need to do another meeting, or?
Well, on the agenda, it's listed as review of the July 4th parade route. So for purposes of keeping this going, I think we can note your feedback within the scope of the minutes and forward it to the board.
you know, I would like to explore, you know, I think one of my biggest concerns is from being somebody that's been, you know, that's been a part of this parade. I've walked in the parade for the past, you know, 6 years probably. And to see the folks on the southern part of Capitol, whether it be in that, the building across from Specter Field, the residents down there. I really want to make sure that we put in some energy into making sure that those residents, the older residents that may have mobility issues, are able to get up to the parade, because I'd hate to exclude anybody from this day and from this celebration. I know in the memo it says that we've talked to Harbor Chase, and they will be using their buses to transport folks up. I just want to make sure that we're also looking at the other building that's down, Menlo and Morris. Yeah, Menlo and Morris. I'd like to make sure that the River Park, that whole facility, there's opportunities for some of those folks if they cannot, if they want to attend and they're mobilely challenged, that they can also make it to the event. So that would be one thing I'd like to explore. And but outside of that, I'm in favor of modifying the route.
Trustee Ursink, I apologize. I believe we had that in the memo. Are you talking about River Park Apartments by
Yep.
Specter Field? They've offered to do that as well. They'd
Oh,
had,
they have
they'd
offered
had
to
to
do that.
stop. Yeah, I asked that question when I spoke to the Director of Life Enrichment at
Okay.
Harbor Chase. So that would be one stop, and they kind of triangulate the village a bit. So that would be one stop. They would also stop at River Park, and then we'd
Oh, perfect.
identify a spot for parade and after activity drop off. All those items have not been finalized quite yet, but the initial discussion
Yep.
has happened in their in favor.
Okay, yeah, there's just, I think little minor details that I think we can work out as we move forward, such as the ending location and how that worked last year. But I think we can talk about that stuff behind the scenes, little improvements just to create more shaded areas. Outside of that, I think, if this makes the community safer and puts less stress on our on the DPW and the police force, then I am more than willing to promote this as moving forward.
Great, thank you.
Was there anyone else from the public or anyone who wanted to be heard?
And the last piece on shade, I will be speaking with Sarah Deneve regarding how we can do that. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people in the community that have pop-ups that they would maybe be willing to donate for the day, or there are a
Yeah.
lot of creative ways.
There's
we can do that.
there's really interesting, just being out on farms a lot, and I hate to make this reference, but they have these really cool cattle shades. I don't know if you've ever seen them, and I'd hate to say let's get cattle shades for our residents, but they're really cool, and you can bring them in, and they're just like these mobile shade units. Could be an interesting option, but
Great.
like I said, we can talk about this stuff offline and figure it out.
Want to make a motion to adjourn?
Yep. So we're just gonna, so I move to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor? say
Aye.
Aye. Okay, meeting's adjourned then.
All right, good evening. To the mic. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the April 7 regular meeting of the Village Board. President McCaig is out. I will be chairing in her absence, and Trustee Kudo is also excused. Is this meeting been properly noticed?
The meeting has been properly noticed and posted according to law.
Okay. There are no special orders of business. Is there a special? Oh,
Oh.
okay, all right.
With
Go
the
ahead.
board, with the board's consent, I would love to propose moving up the proclamation for Trustee Jerry Lynn to special order business.
I would second that. Excellent recommendation. All in favor?
I
Aye.
Aye. All right, President McCaig out. I'm honored to read this proclamation. Whereas Jerry Lynn accepted the call to public service when he was elected as a village trustee of the Village of Shorewood on Tuesday, April 5th, 2022. And whereas Jerry Lynn, during his 3-year tenure, has served in that capacity in a diligent manner, exemplifying a compassion for his community, which the residents of Shorewood have immensely appreciated. And Whereas in his leadership role as chair of several standing committees, Jerry Lynn, in addition to addressing issues which affect the community, made a sincere and thoughtful effort to resolve concerns affecting individual constituents. And whereas the village board of the Village of Shorewood deems it most appropriate and fitting to publicly acknowledge the many contributions of Jerry Lynn to the Village of Shorewood. Now, therefore, I, Ann McCollum McCaig, Village President of the Village of Shorewood, Milwaukee County, Wisconsin, do hereby express the appreciation of the residents of Shorewood to Jerry Lynn and present this proclamation honoring Jerry Lynn for his community-centered, outstanding, compassionate, selfless service to the Village of Shorewood. Dated in the Village of Shorewood in Shorewood, Wisconsin, this day is 7th day of April, 2025.
Thank you very much. This has been one of the great honors of my life to serve on this board. I love this community. I've loved living here for the last 12, 13, 14 years. I'm so happy and proud to be able to raise my children here, and I look forward to retiring in this community. And I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity and the capacity to serve. I look forward to what the future board will do in the upcoming years. I think this board did a great job setting the stage for completion of some of these big projects that we have coming down the line. And I look forward to seeing those come to fruition. And last and most specifically, I'd like to thank my family for supporting me when I ran initially back in 2022 and decided to back in 2021 when I had a very, very small little baby at home. And I'd like to thank my wife especially for helping me and guiding me through this process and supporting my campaign and helping at home the entire time. So I'm very grateful for the community, for my family, and I look forward to the years to come. Thank you.
Any other trustees have anything they'd like to say?
Jerry, it's been an honor working with you. It's been, we're going to miss you from the board. Just your approach, your willingness to collaborate, the ideas and the passion that you brought for certain projects. It's just been a real treat to work with somebody like yourself, and definitely going to miss you. Hopefully someday when everybody's grown up, you decide to come back to the board, because Shorewood really benefited from you being here and the sort of passion and the energy you brought to the board. And the mustache.
That's most.
I also want to thank Jerry. We have not always agreed on everything, but it's been great sharing a desk with you. And I appreciate your perspective and your sincere love of the village. And I'm hoping we get you back in biking. So you come back.
I would just say the same thing. It's been great working with you. Really admire your passion, especially for things related to bike and pedestrian safety. Look forward to kind of carrying that on myself as our most of the other members as well. So I just appreciate your leadership on that in particular, though. I want to say it. Yep.
And finance.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of the same. Appreciate your you bring you've brought a real passion to your role, but also real level-headed approach to thinking things through and engaging with other trustees, even in areas of disagreement, which I think, helped us as a body at times. And, I think it takes a lot of courage to take on a role like this with young children at home. So definitely want to thank the family again for sharing him with us. And we now remand you back to your family. So
Thanks. Still need you tonight. Still have it.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Okay. Next item of business, consent agenda items. Items under the consent agenda may be acted upon by one motion. If in the judgment of any village board members, a consent agenda item needs discussion, the item can be placed and the items removed from the consent agenda. Is there a motion to pass the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just would like to pull item B as in Betty.
Any other items? Okay, okay, is there a motion to pass consent agenda item with item B removed?
Yep, so moved.
Second?
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, item B.
On the minutes, I just wanted to look for a couple of additions or corrections. 9C, outstanding obligations, appointing a fiscal agent. Just for the record, for the minutes, could we please add US, I think it's US Bank Trust Company is who we have appointed with a fee at approximately $5,000 per year. And the other thing I wanted was under item E is in every, consider additional funding for safe streets. The last sentence says the village board agreed to move forward with the request, and I just wanted to change that wording to make it clear that the board agreed to move forward with the original request, not with any additional funding. So it was a little confusing. And with that, I would move to approve item 5B.
Second?
Okay. Director Griepentrag, any? Okay, all right. All right, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item, public hearing. There's no public hearing. Next item, citizens to be heard. This item is for matters not on the agenda. Discussion may follow comments and non-agenda items, or discussion and action may come in future meetings. Are there any citizens to be heard? All right, seeing none, we'll proceed to new business, starting with item A, consider RFP for lead service line plan, water main evaluation, and schedule for replacement and financing.
Included in your packet is an RFP, which provides for a plan to evaluate our water main, create a lead service line replacement plan, and a correlating financing plan. So within there is a scope, and I can address any questions.
I just have a really big picture sort of question. With the sort of change in the environment, in the sort of political environment, do you see sort of the mandate that was sort of put in place with lead laterals being pulled back? And if it is pulled back, how are we going to approach that? Or is that worth a bigger conversation? Because it's a very expensive endeavor here. And if these regulations aren't put forth on us, it might be something worth discussing.
Thank you so much for answering that question, because one of the focuses of this RFP for me is really to look forward the next 5 years for the village and get into place a team that we can then consult with to adjust and be agile with any new administration requirements that come, any new changes in funding, any new changes in regulations. But that we have that study group and team to work with that's going to be complementary to the full-time staff that we have in-house. You really need a team in order to develop a big plan. And over the last year, what I've learned is that you need to learn as much as you can at every single time, pivot point, so that we can get together as a group and then adjust based upon what that information has in store. Because particularly our state low interest financing loan option is the Safe Water Drinking Loan Program. It essentially requires you to be ready to go and forecast where you're going to be 3 years in advance. Will that change? I'm not so sure. All of those things can be worked out, but you need a strong team in order to do it. So you'll notice within the scope of this proposal, I do ask for 3 years, plus also their CPI fixed or whatever their fixed rate is going to be to lock in for the next 2. Working with someone for 3 years only is not sufficient in this circumstance. So really focusing on finding partners so that the village board knows who they're going to work with and knows how to plan for not only the scenario that you talked about, but leaning into rate increases moving forward as it relates to the utilities and the best, most financially prudent way to do that as a village. So you're going to need both, all of those in the mix, but we're going to dip our toe in the water.
Great.
So what if you find out you're not crazy about the team? Would there be the contract language would include an out, I'm assuming,
That-
with 30 days notice, you can blah, blah, blah. Great. I mean, of course, we'd like to think it's going to be great, right? But what if,
Mhm.
but I see it's a multi-year agreement anticipated to go from 2025 to 2030. So just, I'm sure you'll build into the contract language if something doesn't go well.
Yes.
And so my other question is, so the stuff we talk about, everything that's going to happen in 25, 26, and 27, are we not getting any aid for those? Because this is looking for projects that will be shovel ready in 2028. This new team will work on, is that correct? Or
So to maintain compliance with EPA and DNR, we're responsible to provide a plan for LSL replacement by 2027.
we're way ahead of the game by getting this started now? Because this is,
We're not necessarily way ahead of the game. We, as our community, we have definitely been more poised to this topic because we've taken on policy related in this area and starting in 2022. And our DPW team and our utility team has been preparing for this far in advance of that. But I think what's important is that if we're working on that safe drinking water fund loan timeline, 2028 minus 3 years takes us back to 2025. So really it's this year that we need to think about what we're going to be focusing on in 2028 and developing some type of planning mechanism or projection for that. Then the plan will come. But I anticipate that the plan will also have criteria associated with it so that we can pivot at different points, because you may, as from a policy perspective, decide to pivot based upon changes in the regulations, but also the financial component, and any other things that are going on in the village at that time.
and so would this contractor report mostly to you, finance? I'm trying to, like, of all other contractors we have, would be someone that you mostly worked with finance and not necessarily, and public. Do we have any other vendor that we do this, like city water?
Yes, so no, this is new for our municipality. And, I'm happy that you brought this up because I was on the phone earlier today, for example, with our financial advisor, going through the RFP and the components, and letting him know that this would be a new partner to our team. Right? So as we look at things more globally, including that representation from all departments and people who we outsource work with to look at our long-term finances, we're building out, this is just another complement of our team in terms of how we move forward.
And so I see it says it's going to be funded by the utility. Do you see it as a combination of fees and bonding, or strictly bonding, or rate users?
Both.
Do we decide that? Or will that become before us? Like, okay, here's the bill for the consultant. Are you going to break it up?
Well, right now, this is focused on capital infrastructure that would require bonding in order to execute. So it would be rolled into that capital cost.
Will there be benefits to this contractor for us moving forward by replacing our lead service lines, or are they going to look at the big picture and give us the best advice? let's say something changes in, and, the regulation or, the mandate is kind of dialed back a little bit. Will they be open to talking about that? Or are they strictly looking at replacing everything in Shorewood and that's going to be their goal?
They need to be focused on the large picture.
The big picture.
Yep.
So there's no financial benefit for them to want to replace everything, right? If we decide that that's not maybe in our best interest, or we can't, it's hard to move forward with the plan that we have, or this 10-year mandate, will they give us the best advice for that?
I think just to clarify, the firms that we're looking for are professional service firms. So be a combination of the engineering, financial firms. This RFP doesn't include construction.
Right. Okay. That's what I'm wondering. They're not connected to the construction,
No.
in that regard. Okay.
My feeling would be at the end of the day, we decide whether or not we're going to keep with it.
Yep.
And
Correct.
flexibility seems to be.
Yeah.
But you have to have a plan in place to get,
Mhm.
I'm ready with them.
Yeah. Any other discussion or questions?
I move to approve the RFP for lead service line water main evaluations schedule for replacement and financing.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? It will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Item B, consider new utility superintendent job descriptions and updates to the Public Works Director and Public Works Superintendent positions.
I'm ready with a motion. Yeah.
Okay.
I think this is a good idea. I'm looking forward to seeing this go through. I move to recommend to the village board the utility superintendent job description and associated updates to the Public Works Superintendent and Public Works Director job descriptions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I was just wondering, do we have an idea about the pay range for this job? Since it's a new one, I was just looking at the org chart, trying to figure out, we're going to get a new superintendent. Will we still keep our 3 division foremen?
Yes.
We will. Okay, and so at what pay grade? Are we creating a new pay grade? Or is it the one that we approved last year? Where would we be? What would the range be?
We approved one within the scope of the water utility budget, and I don't recall the specific number off memory, but I believe that from a salary component was north of 100,000. I don't recall off the top of my head. I don't have that.
So it'll be below, obviously, Public Works. Well, it'll be another vertical line lateral from DPW superintendent. There'll be a
Correct.
utility superintendent.
Correct.
So it would probably be that same pay grade, right?
It'd be in the same approved range, correct?
Okay. And then then the utility division, the foreman would report to the superintendent. So that division just moves over. Okay. All right. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Item passes 5-0. Next item, consider RFP for mobile parking payment system. I did want to note that was as shared today and earlier. President McCaig asked the board defer action pertaining to the RFP for the mobile parking payment system for action until Oakland Avenue is resurfaced in 2026. Personally, I would like to proceed with this item. I do appreciate the feedback, but I think we have spent a fair amount of time on this. Go on. I'm sorry.
I thought that feedback from President McKay was not about the parking meter RFP, but about the electric scooter. Unless I
It was
misread that.
both.
Unless I, oh, it was
It
both.
both.
Okay.
I would ask the village board to defer action pertaining to the RFP for mobile parking payment and all action pertaining to e-scooters until Oakland Avenue is resurfaced.
Okay.
In
My
2026.
mistake. I was like,
Just for a variety of reasons, we have put some work into this already. We did seek public opinion on this topic as something worth exploring when we did the survey, or blanking on the term we used, the poll, or however we characterized it last year. We will know what the configuration of Oakland will look like. We can talk about what the optimal implementation is and how that would factor into, how that would relate to the work being done on Oakland. But I don't see a compelling reason to stop, the work that's been done at this point and just proceed with the track we're on. So if there is a motion to proceed with this item, I would be supportive of that.
I
Trustee
guess
Stokebrand.
I would say, because we're not starting this until January of 2026, that's what's in the RFP. Once we get the information from applicants, we can see what their numbers are. But I would like to, for budgetary reasons going forward, I'd like to see what kind of revenue we think we can get. And if we decide we don't want to start it until 27 or the fourth quarter of 2026, that's an option too. And when the construction is gone. But I would support moving forward on the RFP for the parking payment. Ready to make a motion.
I would just touch on that briefly too, because I agree. And I would just say I'm not sold on this as we discussed in committee as an idea, but I do think going through with the RFP is the right step either way. So I would support this part of it.
Okay.
I'm going to support it as well, just because it takes so long. Just the RFP, it's not the actual policy change. So I'm going to plan on voting to continue forward.
All right. Trustee Ursink, any?
Nope.
Got it. All right. Trustee Stokebrand.
I move to approve the RFP for mobile parking payment analysis and system.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. Item C passes 5-0. Next item, consider ordinance 3072, an ordinance to create regulations related to electric scooter operations and the allowance of short-term commercial rentals. As mentioned, President McKay asked to defer action on this until after Oakland Avenue is resurfaced in 2026. Is there any discussion on this one?
I have been thinking about this also. First of all, Lake Drive this year and Oakland Avenue next year. It just doesn't seem like it'd be right time to do a pilot. How do you determine success when two of your major streets are torn up? And looking at those pictures too, we're all on Oakland Avenue. It's a liability, I think. And for that reason, I was curious about if we had the resolution establishing the pilot program, would we need the ordinance just to regulate it? That thinking here, you can't have a pilot program you can't have a resolution without an ordinance?
Correct. So per state statute, in order to allow short-term rentals, it needs to be approved by the body. And so within the ordinance, section D relates to the allowance of short-term rentals. So that's why I have them ordered as I do, the ordinance coming first. If that were to pass, then you could consider the short-term pilot program. So you would need the ordinance to have the resolution.
I am very grateful to staff for all the time you've spent on this. It's been a real learning experience. I can see myself possibly voting for this in 2027, the pilot program for one season. But I think because of the situation we have right now, roads, I would move to.
Any further discussion, trustee Lynn?
I have very strong opinions about this, and I understand I may be outside of the norm, but I'm opposed to e-scooters in general. Right from the very first line, it says the use of e-scooters provides a pollution-free means of transportation, and we know that it doesn't because the scooters themselves create pollution. They litter. Pieces of plastic fall off. We've found them in the bottom of the river already, in the city of Milwaukee, where people have trashed them and things like that. So right from the jump, I don't think they're a good part of our community. The second thing is while I love the idea of, battery powered transportation and things like that, these are not safe. Many people are injured on these every year, every summer, especially in the city of Milwaukee. They're not used to riding them. They look easier to ride than they actually are. They go fast. People crash and get seriously injured on a regular basis, and they're very expensive and deceptively expensive. You go a very short distance at a very high cost. And I'm just not interested in supporting, tech executives in Silicon Valley sucking profits off of low income people in our community. I mean, to me, that's just not right or just. And again, like I said, I may be way out in left field on this one, but I just am opposed to these in general. So I wouldn't support this either way.
I'm going to vote for it. I see them parked all the time on the Oak Leaf Trail at the Edgewood border. It just seems like we're putting up a barrier to people coming to Shorewood and getting around. And, I understand Oakland Avenue is going to be rebuilt, but that's been on the calendar since like 2022. So I wouldn't want to tie other actions to that. There's, Downer Avenue is nicely resurfaced. There's plenty of other streets to get around Shorewood besides Oakland Avenue. I just think we should give people more options, especially given the state of most of our transportation around Shorewood is just people driving their own car. So any alternative we can provide to that, I think, is a step in the right direction with the regulations that would be in place for safety on sidewalks and so on. So I'm planning on supporting.
All right. Trustee Ursink, anything to add? Or
I do plan on, I see the benefit of having multiple modes of transportation in Shorewood. I understand what Trustee Lynn is saying. I hear what President McKeag has said, and I'm stuck somewhere in the middle. I think it's going to be really hard to, if there's anything that can help our businesses, if this helps our businesses during this next coming summer, I'm 100% for it, because I think, you're going to look at Oakland Avenue as it's going to take a big hit. And if for whatever reason electric scooters can help, I'm for it. If they're not helpful and they get in the way, I think that's my big question is, are we going to allow scooters on Oakland? I mean, can people use scooters on Oakland Avenue while it's getting repaved?
No, it's going to be.
It's going to be repaved and they can't use the sidewalk. So there's going to be a
can't.
large portion of the community where people can't use e-scooters at all. So I think it's going to be a really hard time to do a pilot project. I'd be much more in favor of doing this project once it's Oakland's repaved and it's resurfaced, because right now, I mean, if somebody were to drive one of those scooters on Oakland Avenue, it's hard enough to bike. I could imagine plenty of scooter accidents happening as well. So I'm in favor of this, but I think I'm more in favor of seeing this happen after Oakland Avenue and Lake Drive are both paved.
okay. And I mean, this is for creating the regulation related to it, not for the actual pilot program. So we could approve this.
I just, I guess,
without having to approve a pilot program, correct?
are we putting more work on your plate now if we're not going to do this anyway?
Yeah, that was my question. I mean, is there any, you guys have done it, we could punt on whether we do it or not, but is there any benefit one way or another if we're not going to proceed with, let's say we decide, is there any benefit to approving this even if we don't vote for the pilot, or
It's
is it 6-1?
It's confusing. I would not put it on your books. I wouldn't take the time to incorporate it within the code, if it's not something that you're looking to do,
Okay.
we can shelve it and make a note if you want to pick it up in 2027.
Yeah, the template's created, so it's just a matter of bringing it back and or approving it now, whatever your discretion is.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I don't just want to clarify, don't want to create any unnecessary complexity one way or another. So
I just
Pretty
wanted to
good.
make a procedural observation. I think you certainly can do it whichever way you want, but essentially a no vote on the proposed ordinance is essentially equivalent to moving to table it for another year or defer it for another year, because you always have the ability to bring it back as a future board. Again, if you want to make a specific motion that says, I'd like to defer the matter and have it specifically brought back at a certain, 2026 in the spring or whatever it might be, you can certainly do that, but it might get a little bogged down and a little confusing. You might be better off with just a straight up yes or no vote on the underlying ordinance, and based upon the discussion here tonight, staff can always refloat that balloon, next spring for 2026 if they see fit. So I just wanted to make that procedural.
okay.
I did want to also note my shared concern. These, I think one of the biggest issues is having them littered over the sidewalk and being used on sidewalks. And staff from Public Works has noted concern over being required to respond to abandoned or stray scooters. I don't want our staff spending time on this. And the police department has noted concerns over reckless scooter behavior, including on the sidewalk. I don't want them to have to deal with that. And can you say to Lime, like, okay, they're not going to be allowed in parks. So at Atwater Park, someone comes on a scooter and they're not supposed to put it in the park. So where are they going to leave their scooter? Every yard around Atwater Park before you get there?
Probably right where it stops it,
It just doesn't, it's not a good idea. And I would rather see people use the bus and a bicycle.
All right. Is there a motion?
I would move to defer this item until spring 2026. Do I need to add anything additional to that? Or is that clear enough? Move to defer until spring 2026.
A second. This is on the ordinance.
Correct. I guess it might be better to put a month in there. Because what is spring?
April 2026.
My second statement.
Yep. All right. It's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I believe this is a roll call vote.
I think it's going to be divided, so you might.
Trustee Lynn,
Aye.
trustee McGovern,
Nay.
trustee Ursink,
Aye.
trustee Stokebrand,
Aye.
trustee Arndorf.
Aye.
Motion carried 4-1.
All right. Item E, I'm sorry, item E, I was right, man. Don't doubt yourself. Consider resolution 2025-04, establishing a pilot program to allow commercial electric scooter operations within Shorewood. Is there a motion?
I would again move to defer until April 2026.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, is this voice vote or?
I think you might as well, because as a practical matter, that's what's going to happen. And you're not going to have a pilot program without the ordinance.
Right,
So,
okay, all right,
yeah, if you want to just take a voice vote.
okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, 4-1, item E, deferred. Item F, consider resolution 2025-05, a resolution amending the village fee schedule to include an online permit fee. Director Creepenchaw.
So yeah, just there's a memo in the packet as well, but this is the final step of document management in my department. So last week we had representatives from our software BSNA come to set up the system to allow online permits. every online permit that is submitted, BSNA will invoice us $3 per application. So to recoup those costs, we would like to add a $3 online permit fee to the fee schedule so that it just balances out what we are invoiced every quarter.
Trustee Stokely.
Congratulations on getting this far in this project.
That's been a
Nice
big
work.
one. That's, wow.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
I'm prepared to make a motion. I would just like to add in the amount. Is there a problem with that?
Oh, did I not?
No,
Sorry.
it's, okay, if you're ready.
Yep.
I move to approve resolution 2025-05, a resolution amending the village fee schedule to include an online permit fee of $3.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? And is this a roll call vote? Okay.
Trustee Ursink,
Yay.
trustee Lynn,
Aye.
trustee Stokbrand,
Aye.
trustee Arndorfer,
Aye.
trustee McGovern.
Aye.
Motion carried 5-0.
All right, that concludes new business. On to reports of village officials. We already shared the stirring proclamation for trustee Jerry Lynn. Any reports from trustees? All right, village manager.
So wanted to get your input on attendance at the Milwaukee County Historical Society Annual Dinner. We do have a member of our community, Doris Heiser, who is going to be receiving one of their annual honorary awards, in addition to them honoring us for our 125th anniversary this year as a community. So wanted to get the board's flavor in terms of whether there was interest from board members to attend. And if there was interest to attend, whether you wanted to proceed with purchasing a table, which would then also list you as a sponsor in conjunction with the event.
When is it? What's the date?
May 22nd.
Yes.
I would, I'd be in favor of this. I'm free that night and but, no, I think, I think it's an incredible sort of, it's an honor for our resident, for our community. And I always love these situations where we can get, our group together of trustees and be there to represent our community. I'd be in favor of getting a table and going out for the evening and representing our community at this event.
A quick question. I believe the email, or there was some communication from the Historical Society. They already have 3 people going. So could some of those people fill that table of 8? I would hope.
I could reach out and ask.
Because, it just seems like that would be, and Doris, be nice. It does seem like a fitting thing for us to do with our village anniversary. I wouldn't say I want to support this every year, but given that it's our anniversary and we have a resident getting this award, it seems like a good statement to make out of our budget for that line item. Does that use half of it? Or I meant to look and I don't.
No.
If someone else wants to go to a workshop or something.
Oh, yes.
I would be supportive too, and I don't think we'd have a hard feeling, especially if those people were.
Do you know if they've already supplied her a table? And I would assume they've probably given her tickets if they're honoring her.
Yeah.
Or maybe she has family.
That would make sense. I don't know, but I can inquire and ask. I think for purposes of tonight, if there's the certainty of the board that we'd like to go forward with a table for sponsorship, I can work on that tomorrow and then reach out to them and ask and circle back with the group.
Yep.
Okay. All right. I think I'm free that night too.
Okay. Great. Then included also within your packet is an update to the 2026 communication plan. Last week,
Do
we
you need a
spent-
motion? Do you need a motion on this?
No,
Okay.
just direction. So last week, our a finance team, specifically David Hickey, has what we determined is that we actually had to create a database to merge with our utility billing system. So he had to go through each and every parcel in the village and line it up to our utility billing system in order to create a file to import. So sharing that with you only because it's extremely detailed, technical. So we think as of tomorrow, we'll be at a point to kind of finalize and then move forward with establishing linear footage. So what you see on the plan is me kind of backing up the timeline in terms of communication and trying to assess dates to communicate with the public as reminders on the streetlight charge and just be available for any questions. So we continue on that path. Tomorrow evening, I do meet with the Shorewood School Board. I won't have a specific number for them, but we'll have the estimates that we've previously determined based upon $5 per linear foot. And then we'll also talk with them about the other highlighted topics of note within our community. One being the release of the RFP for parking, and then also talking with them about any questions or concerns that they have moving forward so that we can be including that and I can be bringing back that feedback.
All right. Trustee Stokbrand, anything?
Yeah, it seemed to me there was something in one of your emails about that, I believe it is the audit that will be, 2024 audit will be presented in August. So at this point, does it look like
Yes.
we will have an August?
Yes, we always have an August meeting. We always have a meeting the first weekend or first weekend, first Monday in July, which I believe is the 7th, and then the first Monday in August, which
I thought we didn't have one. Whatever. That's okay. So good to know.
yeah, I wanted to build in that timeline and get them scheduled so that we had a good outlook of what we had on deck. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. All right, future items of consideration. There are no future items of consideration. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
I move that the village board adjourn into closed session pursuant to 19.851C to discuss the annual performance evaluation of the village manager.
Second.
All right, is this a roll call vote?
Yes.
Trustee McGovern,
Aye.
trustee Arndorfer,
Aye.
trustee Stokbrand,
Aye.
trustee Ursink,
Aye.
trustee Lynn.
Aye.
Motion carry 5-0.
For purposes of the individuals who are joining us online, we're going to be shutting down the Zoom, and there will be no action taken after the scope of this meeting, but a motion of adjournment.
Thank you.